Hello and welcome to another yarn review. My name is Anniken and you can find me at www.yarnaddict.co.uk, and I am YarnAddict Annie on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll put all the links below this video. So this video is another yarn review. It's for this lovely yarn that I knitted this shawl in. It's quite cold today, so I got my hand warmers on. I'll just mention quickly what these hand warmers are before I start, just in case anyone are wondering. So these are cashmere hand warmers from a British company called Turtle Doves. And they are really lovely and comfortable. And I've got 3 pairs at the moment. I had a pair a couple of years ago which wore out, and then last winter I managed to get 3 pairs, and they are just really warm. And it's been really cold here this week, so I'm wearing these most of the day. Really lovely to wear this shawl as well today because it is really cold today. My office is probably the warmest room in the house because the sun's shining on here at the moment, which is why the light is slightly funny as well. So thank you for joining me today. I wanted to do another yarn review video. So this is a shawl called Vinstra. Vinstra is a place in Norway, and I'll put the links below. And I knitted this shawl when I was in Norway in November, and I bought the yarn when I was in Norway in November. So I spent 5 weeks in Norway in November visiting my family. I had to quarantine for the first 10 days, so I couldn't visit any yarn shops. But I decided that instead of taking yarn with me for a big project, I would buy some yarn while I was in Norway. But I forgot about I didn't think about the fact that I would have to quarantine for 10 days. So I wouldn't be able to visit any yarn shops. So when I got to Norway, the only yarn I had with me was for socks and a pair of leg warmers. So I went online and I'd followed this particular yarn dyer, indie dyer, Norne yarns, for a while, but I'd never actually purchased any of her yarns. But I know they look absolutely beautiful, so I had a look on her website, found a couple of colours I really liked, and a base yarn I really wanted to try, and ordered it, and it arrived a few days later. I'll talk more about availability of this yarn later, but it is available to ship to quite a few countries in the world. So I'm going to talk about the yarn first, and I'll talk a little bit about the shawl later, and links to everything I'm going to talk about is below this video. So Norne Yarn is a Norwegian indie dyer. She's based in Oslo. She dyes semi-solid kettle-dyed yarns in lace and fingering weight. So this is a fingering weight yarn, which is similar to 4-ply. This is a Merino silk and yak blend. So it has 65% superwash merino, 20% silk, and 15% yak. Yak comes from yak animals that live in the Himalayas. This yarn is incredibly soft. It's a singles yarn, which means that it consists of just one single strand of yarn. I don't know whether you can see this. Most yarns have several strands plied together so that you can kind of pull the strands apart like that. But this yarn is just a singles yarn, so it's just one single strand plied together. That makes it perfect for things like shawls. So the silk, the merino, and the yak content makes it very soft, and the singles construction makes it perfect for shawls, in my opinion. It's smooth, it's incredibly soft and silky, it feels luxurious, and it has really amazing drape. I knitted this shawl on 4mm needles, which is US size 6. If you're going to knit just stocking stitch, you would probably knit it on the smaller needle size. I did knit up a little swatch in stocking stitch, which I did on 3.5mm needles. If I was going to do a sweater in stocking stitch, I might do it on slightly smaller 3.25mm needles, but I couldn't find those needles. But it knits up really nicely in stocking stitch. It's very smooth and even stitch definition. This was knitted and then I just lightly steamed it to smooth it out a little bit. And it's got really nice even stitch definition. Singles yarn, especially singles yarn made from soft fibres, won't be very hard wearing, so you may not want to use a luxury yarn like this for things that are going to be subject to a lot of wear and tear, like socks or even things like hand warmers, if you use them a lot. So I usually wear hand warmers when I'm driving, when I'm shopping, all that kind of stuff. So my knitted hand warmers do tend to get quite worn out on this part of the hand because I'm holding the steering wheel a lot and that kind of thing. Obviously this winter I'm doing a lot less of that, so so that's one thing to be aware of. Also sweaters knitted out of very soft fibres that are prone to pilling, which I would guess that this would probably be prone to pilling. I haven't tried it. I haven't knitted a garment in this blend before, so I don't know if that's true or not, but my guess would be that it's prone to pilling. You can get a lot of pilling in areas that rub together, so this area, but it's perfect for things like shawls, scarves, cows, that kind of thing. And I'm not saying you can't knit sweaters out of it. I'm just saying if wearability is a big issue, you may want to knit a swatch, probably one that's a bit bigger than this, and then carry it around, put it in your pocket, rub it, abuse it for a while and see how it wears, which I haven't done because I only knitted the swatch yesterday. Both Merino and yak are very soft, warm fibres. They're very short. The fibre length is quite short. And then, but silk fibres are quite long. So it's got the combinations of two very short fibres and one very long fibre. Yak is less common fibre, quite luxurious, a bit more expensive. It's only got, this yarn only has 15% yak in it, but the yak, you can still feel that in the yarn. It still affects the yarn. Yak is not quite as fine as cashmere, but it's close. So it's quite a luxurious yarn. Yak is grey or grey brown in colour. So when it's mixed with merino silk or other fibres, the base yarn before you dye it is usually grey. So yarns like merino, silk tend to be bleached, so it's white or off-white when it's before it's dyed, and when you mix yak in with it you tend to get a grey or light grey yarn, and that affects the colours. So if you're dyeing a yarn that's grey in like the base colour, you're not going to get bright colours like this. So if you look at that pink and that yellow, sort of bright clear colours, that's only going to happen if the yarn's been actually bleached beforehand. Instead with the yak you get sort of slightly more muted colours, which I really like. And you can see when you knit with this yarn, as you knit with it, the yarn has a bit of a halo, and you can see, I don't think you can probably see it on the video, especially because the light's a bit funny in here, but you can, on this lighter colour, you can kind of see a little bit sort of grey brownish tinge to it, which will be the yak. As this is running through your hands as you knit it, you do tend to end up with a little bit of this kind of brown fibre kind of felting around your yarn. I tend to just carry on pushing it down the yarn till it gets a little bit bigger than this, and then I just pull it off. I tend to put my needle in to the middle of that because it's kind of stuck around the yarn. I tend to just put my knitting needle in through the middle of it and just pull it off. Or if I leave it too big, I may have to get my scissors out. Just be careful you don't cut the yarn. If the yarn's been cut like this, you can just pull it off the end. But it's just a little bit of that kind of loose fibre that kind of creates the halo that this yarn has. That's kind of been pulled down the yarn. And I find that that happens with quite a few sort of soft yarns. Things like alpaca, mohair, obviously, because they're quite hairy yarns, but even soft merinos and that kind of thing, that can happen. I think this yarn is perfect for lace knitting and lace shawls, partly because of the fibre blend, but also partly because of the singles construction, and the addition of silk as well is really good. It will block really well, and it feels soft and drapey, and it's lovely to wear. It's really warm, but it also has even stitch definition. So this shawl was knitted in garter stitch, and then I knitted the stocking stitch swatch as well. But the yarn has really even stitch definition when I knitted the stocking stitch swatch, so I think it would look good in stranded colour work as well, but obviously I haven't tried it. You could also knit cables with it. Singles yarns don't tend to look as good in cables as plied yarns, in my opinion. Plied yarns are slightly more rounder, especially if they have 3 or 4 or more plies. If it's a yarn that only has 2 plies, 2 strands plied together, I don't think it looks as good in cables. But if it's got several strands plied together, I think it looks quite good in cables. And because it has more bounce and it makes the cables kind of stand out a bit more, whereas if you knitted cables for this yarn, it'd probably be a bit more subtle. And also obviously it's a thinner yarn as well. But I really like this yarn and I would definitely use it again. This is a Norwegian yarn. On their website they have a list of countries around the world that they ship to. They ship to the United States, they ship to all the countries within the EU. I think it's all the countries within the EU or the EEA. It does say that they ship to Britain, but they list Britain as being part of the EU or EEA. And obviously Britain has now left the EU, so I don't know whether, I'm assuming they still ship to Britain, but I don't know. Also, there's been a bit of a problem in the run up to Christmas with regards to COVID. A lot of European companies have stopped shipping to the UK at the moment because of problems with the border. There are some countries that won't allow passenger flights to and from the UK because of the new variant of the COVID virus that we have here now. And also Brexit has caused some problems and working exactly what the customs arrangements are and stuff like that. So I don't know what the situation is at the moment with regards to shipping yarn from Norway to the United Kingdom. Best thing is to look on their website, which I'll leave the link below, and then send her a message or reach out to her on Instagram, or just try and place an order and put in your address and see if it'll allow you. I'm pretty sure if there are any problems, they'll get sorted out. But if you're in any doubt, don't just think because it's an EU country you can't order. Just contact her and see if you can. Actually, Norway is not an EU country. Norway is part of the European Economic Area, the EEA. But yes, one thing to be aware of, if you do order from a country within the EU or EEA, in the UK at the moment, you may have to pay customs charges. Customs charges usually isn't very much on a small order, a few pounds. But the post office here in the UK charge a collection fee on top, and I don't know what that currently is, but I got a feeling it might be something like £8. So I would expect if I'd ordered this online, I mean, I'm not a customs expert and I don't know what the customs rate is. You can probably find it by Googling it, but I would expect probably to pay like £10–12 when I collect the parcel from the local delivery office, on top of what I paid for the yarn. But I don't know that, you know, I'm not saying that's definite, that's just my guess. But I thought it was worth mentioning that. So I would definitely order this yarn again. I really, really like it. I love Norne yarns colorways. They're really subtle, semi solid colors. So you can see here there's a little bit of variation in this yarn. It's not completely solid. She has loads of other blends. A lot of them include silk, which I really like because that's perfect for lace shawls. I knitted this shawl called Vinstra. I decided to go for a Norwegian name since I bought the yarn in Norway, which I have just released. And it uses 2 skeins. Each skein is, let me just check, 480 meters. And 120 grams. So it is a slightly bigger skein than your average sock yarn skein. So that's one thing to be aware of. If you want to knit this shawl, but you don't have this yarn and you want to use another sock yarn, perhaps something from your stash, be aware of the fact that this uses 2 skeins and each skein is 450 meters or 120 grams each. I did have some yarn left over. They're probably about 10 grams each, so there is a little bit of leeway there, but I always allow a little bit of safety margin anyway. So just be aware, if you have 2 skeins of sock yarn in your stash and you think you can use those, a lot of sock yarns have about 400 meters and you will need a little bit more than that. So this shawl is a crescent shawl. It's knitted from the top down, so it starts here and it has big eyelets. Got one type of eyelet at the top here in this darker color, and then it's got some other eyelets further down. They got double eyelets, and then there's another lace pattern for the edging. hang on, down here, various types of stripes, a little bit of an easy lace pattern at the bottom, and then the edging, which is knitted in the lighter colorway, is knitted on sideways, so it's a knitted on edging. There are also some short rows, so there's this purple wedge here is a solid colored short row, and then on this side it has some short rows, you can see here, hang on, here in stripes, and then there are some more short rows down here. So there are short rows both in just garter stitch and also in the simple lace pattern. My the pattern has a link to 2 tutorials, one for how to do German short rows, which is my preferred way of doing short rows, and one for knitting on the edging. So this edging at the bottom here, there's a tutorial for how to knit that on. It's not that difficult when you have a go at it, and if those are new techniques to you and you're worried about that, knit a little swatch and have a practice before you do it on the actual shawl, and use things like lifelines and that. You can find links to all that on my website, to tutorials for that on my website. But the actual lace pattern itself is fairly easy, but the short rows and the knitted on edging does add a little bit of complexity. But it's a really big shawl. As you can see from the video at the beginning of this yarn review, it is a very big shawl. It's big and cozy. You can probably make it smaller, but you would then need to work out the edging, and I haven't done the maths for that. I decided to offer this in one size, and it is a fairly big size because that's what I felt like designing. So this is Vinstra. I have a blocking video for this shawl as well, so I will link to that below, and I'll also link to where you can get the pattern. The pattern is available on both Ravelry and Payhip, and I'll also put the links to the Norne yarn below as well. So thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and look out for more yarn review videos plus regular podcast videos. Thank you very much for watching.